So in the last video, we counted how many of each value we got. We wrote down what we expected. We found the difference between the two. We squared those differences. And then we came up with a ratio of those squared differences divided by what we expected. That gave us a standardized difference or standardized score, just like a z-score, but this time it's chi-squared. So this is a chi-squared contribution of what happened for the ones, what happened to the twos, the threes, and so on. When I added all these up, that tells us the total amount. It differs from what we really expected. So that gave us this chi-squared test statistic. And just like with a z statistic, we can go to a chart and look to see what the probability is. This time we're going to go to a chi-squared table. Now to show you what the chi-squared distribution looks like, this is a chi-squared distribution. This value here is the chi. Notice that we got let me go back and check here. We got 5.6. So if we look at this chi-squared distribution, if I had a chi of 2.5, then I'd be looking at all this area. Chi of 5, all this area. Well, we got 5.6. So we're looking at this area right here and to the right. That area gives us what we call the p-value, just like it did in the stats. So there's a table for that, just like there is in stats. And here's the table. Notice we have degrees of freedom. Okay, the degrees of freedom is basically how many categories you have minus 1. We have 6 different numbers. So again, we're going to look at the chart. We have 6 different values here. Okay, if we take 6 minus 1, we get 5. That means that these 5 values can be whatever they want to be. But once we have those 5 values, in order to get this answer, this has to be a particular number. So these 5 items are free to move around. This one isn't. So our degrees of freedom is equal to 6 minus 1, which is 5. So degrees of freedom that is equal to the number of categories minus 1. In this case, we have 6 categories, therefore 5 degrees of freedom. Okay, so if I have 5 degrees of freedom, I have a chi-squared of 5.6. I go to my table, I find the number 5, and I try to look for 5.6 is between these two values. So that means that our degree of freedom is somewhere, or our p-value is somewhere between 0.25 and 0.5. So here we could say p-value. Let me put a less than sign in front of it. Based on that chart, you know that the p-value is between 0.25 and 0.5. Since the p-value is between 0.25 and 0.5, this is considered not very rare at all. And we would fail to reject it. If this were an hypothesis test, we would fail to reject it. And I'll get into a more formal test. At this point, I just want you to see what the probability of this happening by chance. Not that big of a deal. Happens a third of the time, essentially.